Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Hi, welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Neil Munro.
I'm Ian Stone.
So today we're going to talk about what do you do if you don't have the budget to sort out your asbestos problems?
Yeah, so if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have the budget to deal with all of this asbestos.
Yeah, so you've had a survey done, or you've had some information that you have got asbestos, it's in a poor condition, and you really do need to do something about it to kind of prevent people being exposed to asbestos, but you just haven't got the funds there basically to pay for kind of remediation work. So that might be removal or encapsulation, making safe, repairing, overboarding, etc. So what can we do?
Well, first off, you need to make an assessment. And I'm talking kind of a holistic overview assessment of everything.
Yeah.
You might have damaged asbestos, but it might be in a location where people don't access, people don't go into, which you can create this assessment by doing priority risk assessments, which is a good kind of formulated, definitive way. But without even getting too complicated, just think about it in a holistic approach.
Yeah, simple terms. What's the risk of someone being exposed to? What's the risk of somebody coming into contact with this damaged asbestos?
Yeah.
And really, that's all you need to look at. And how can you prevent that happening?
Yeah, exactly. And then when you identify these areas, I mean, fair enough. If there's something, say it's a school and in a classroom, there's damaged asbestos insulating board in the classroom, you can't do anything about that unless you can lock off that classroom. I mean, so you still could look at that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you lock the classroom off? Can you stop people entering and accessing into that classroom?
Yeah, generally that's going to be probably your most cost-effective way is, locking off, isolating those areas. So like Ian said, if it's a room, lock that room off. If it's a ceiling void, restrict access to that ceiling void. If it's a floor duct or anything like that, you can prevent people going into there. So really that is the most cost-effective way, is isolating those areas, preventing people going in there, disturbing or coming into contact with any asbestos fibre.
Yeah. With areas like floor ducts and boiler rooms, things like that, that's when permit to work systems should really kick in, because that's the easiest way to manage those. It is a little bit more difficult in kind of, less constructional type places.
Yeah. For instance, if there's, damaged asbestos insulating board on the outside of the main entrance and there's no other way of getting into the building, you're kind of a bit stuck there you need to do something, because probably creating a new entrance is going to be more expensive than obviously dealing with that asbestos.
Definitely.
So then you maybe need to look at, going out, obviously looking out to the market to see what is the most cost-effective solution of putting that asbestos into a safe condition.
Yeah, and that is the thing. There's always different options.
Yeah.
It's not always removal. It's not always repair. It's, like we're saying, that there are other options available. So it is kind of speaking with a decent asbestos consultant that has worked on similar projects and has got different ideas on what they can do and what can be done to help you with that scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it is always good to get an independent view, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, asbestos removal contractors, if you get a decent one, they will generally give you the best advice that they are remediating that asbestos. But it really is good to get an independent asbestos consultant on board, because you will always get an impartial, independent, and unbiased viewpoint from that, and they will recommend the best course of action in line with what you need, really.
Yeah, and along with that, I mean, if you get them in and on board early enough, because the whole thing with, all right, you haven't got the money to deal with the asbestos now, you've got to find that money from somewhere at some point if you want to use those areas again. If you've gone down the lock that area off route. So
yeah,
you're kind of...
Let's be honest, lots of people can't really, manage knocking off and isolating parts of buildings for a long period of time, really, because it kind of defeats the object of having the building in place. So,
well, exactly, you're paying rates for that space and that area, and it's kind of silly not to use the building to its full capacity.
Yeah.
So getting a consultant on board early on is key, and having that discussion of how you're going to do it. And once you've got the answers to that, you can then put it and plan it in your budget for the next quarter, the next 6 months, next year, whatever. And then you've got that kind of definitive finishing line of, when that's going to be dealt with by then.
Yeah.
And depending on what scenario and what condition the asbestos is in and things like that, they can then assist you with other stuff, such as ensuring that the areas in and around it are safe. And what I mean by that is, you've got a room that's got bloody asbestos everywhere. It's all damaged. It's in a horrendous condition. The room's locked off. But how do you know that asbestos isn't kind of exiting under the door, that kind of stuff, and people aren't being exposed? Well, they can help with doing air monitoring, can't they?
Yeah, that's very important. Whatever you decide to do, you kind of really need to have evidence that whatever procedures or fixes that you've put in place, that they're adequate and they're working. And the only really way to sort of confirm that, like Ian said, if you've got damaged asbestos, is kind of doing air monitoring to make sure that the asbestos fibre isn't, deteriorating, it isn't becoming airborne.
It's not escaping from that area.
From those areas, and the procedures that you've put in place are actually working and people are not being exposed to asbestos.
That's it, because it's scientific proof at the end of the day, isn't it? That whilst that air monitoring pump was on and that snapshot of time, the decisions that you've made, everything is safe and fine outside that area.
Yeah, and I think that is really important. When you can look at asbestos and it's in a good condition, and when you look at asbestos and it's in a poor condition, you really do need something to back up to say, okay, I know that asbestos is in a poor condition, it's isolated in that area, all the areas are surrounding that locked off location are not being exposed to asbestos fibre. And that's really important if you've got occupants occupying the area surrounding there, not for just their reassurance, but legally, really, and it's evidence that you've not exposed them to asbestos fibre. It's really important.
It's essentially coming back to like a risk assessment level, isn't it? Of you've assessed the risk, you've put stuff in place, and then you've proven that what you've put in place works.
Yeah, and it's not just that one occasion as well. You kind of need, if it's going on for a long term, that will need to be staged as well, because we all know stuff can change, and you might have the asbestos deteriorating even more. You may have people, even the building changes over time, like the airflow through the building as it changes from summer to winter. You may have heating coming on, air conditioning in summer. All these building sort of occupation activities can affect the asbestos at different times of the year.
Yeah, so if you are looking to put it in next year's budget, well, you should have a few air monitoring visits throughout that period just to cover everything off that Neil mentioned, definitely.
Yeah, and it's really important to review that constantly, because as we all know, you may plan to lock that door, but is it staying locked? Have other people got access to it? And if that isn't working, then you may need to sort of review and change that. You may need to consider completely mechanically restricting access to those areas. So, it's a constant review, particularly if you have got damaged asbestos, to make sure that no one is being exposed to asbestos fibre.
But hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight. If you don't have the budget, there's still options there for you. If you do have any issues with asbestos, by all means, reach out to us, because we'll gladly have a chat with you and give you our opinion on what we think you can achieve with a minimal budget.
Yeah, we always like problem solving. And it's kind of what we like to do, don't we?
We do indeed.
The bigger the situation, the better. It gives us something to sort of like work towards. And we've helped lots of clients in similar positions, because we know asbestos removals and remediations can be expensive, but you don't always have to fork out loads of money straight away. Just having those procedures in place, that's really important.
Definitely. So if you don't have a budget, you can still do stuff. But remember, asbestos first, not last.